Hey Jexiteers, thanks again for stopping by. If you're new to the channel, my name is Riley and I'm a former Jehovah's Witness. So today, in celebration of reaching 1,000 subscribers on the channel, which is absolutely fantastic, I decided to do a little Q&A. So I reached out to my followers on Twitter and basically asked them for questions, which I will answer in this video. Okay, so let's jump right into it. So I'm going to be reading these questions off my laptop, so if I'm not looking at the camera, that's the reason why. Now, the first question comes from Rafael Parisi, and he asks, do you regret anything about your leaving process or wish you did something differently? Well, Rafael, that's a very good question. As anyone who's left the Jehovah's Witness organization will know, leaving always comes with a price, and sometimes that price is very high. In my case, I have paid a very high price for leaving the organization, but there are things that I'm in my life right now that I'm very extremely happy with. And if I didn't leave the organization in the way that I did, I wouldn't have those things. So, namely, my partner, Marsha, I would never have met her if I didn't leave the organization in a way that I did. And also waking up and realizing that the JWs are not the one true religion. If I'd left any other way, I doubt I would have come to that realization. Or maybe I would have, but definitely not in the way that I have now. You know, so I just think that everything came together in a way that, you know, I wouldn't want to change because it would affect the outcome. Yeah, so while I'm sad about the things that I've lost, I'm very happy with the things that I've gained, and for that reason, I wouldn't change anything. The next question is from 1 month old, funny name, and the question is, are you happy you took the red pill? Yeah, good question. Very similar to the last question, actually. So that's a reference to the Matrix movie where Morpheus offers Neo the red pill or the blue pill. The red pill means waking up and unplugging from the Matrix, and the blue pill means going back in. So yes, I'm very happy that I took the red pill. Yeah, once I learned that this organization is not the truth, there's no way that I could go back to it. And the next question is from my good friend Dennis, and his question is, what woke you up? Okay, so I did a whole video series that answers this question, which I will link up there. To answer that question, it wasn't any one thing. My waking up was a process that started about a year before I even left the organization. So it was a process of several different things. But just to answer the question briefly, I can break it down into 6 parts, and they are systemic injustice, particularly where the elder arrangement is concerned, how the organization stereotypes worldly people or non-witnesses, which I found to be completely untrue after leaving the organization. The governing body, they admitted that they are neither infallible or inspired, which means basically that they're just making it up as they go along or just interpreting the Bible best they can without any kind of special or direct access to or knowledge from God. So after admitting that, to me, they just lost all credibility. The New Light doctrine, once I realized that the scripture the organization uses to justify this New Light doctrine has nothing to do with the progressive revelation of biblical understanding, it just made no sense to me after that. Also, the fact that New Light often contradicts previous New Light. So both things can't be true and both things can't come from Jehovah God. It just doesn't make any sense. The truth doesn't contradict itself. Then there was discovering that in the 1930s, Judge Rutherford, who was the second president of the organization, wrote a letter ingratiating himself to Adolf Hitler. That really was a big blow. I'd already made up my mind that the Jehovah's Witnesses are not the one true religion at this point, but when I found that out, it was a real disappointment. And lastly, the Australian Royal Commission. That one just knocked it out of the park. Okay, so the next question is from, I don't know how to pronounce this, Yasuke. I guess. Okay, so two questions, one light-hearted and one serious. Question one, which celebrity public figure would you cast as a voice actor in a JW convention drama? And his pick for Moses would be the director of the WHO. I actually can't remember what his voice sounds like, but I'm sure he would be a good Moses. As a Star Wars fan, I would probably choose James L. Jones, and I think he would do really well as being the voice of Jehovah God coming down from the clouds, like in that scene in The Lion King where he talks to Simba from the heavens. I think that would be really cool. Okay, and a second question. How often do you have awkward encounters with members of your former congregation? Good question. Um, to be honest, not a lot. I haven't had any awkward encounters with members of my former congregation. I've had two encounters with witnesses, but they weren't from my former congregation. One of them was actually a friend of mine. But no, I haven't bumped into anyone from my former congregation, most likely because I don't live anywhere near there at the moment. Okay, so the next question is from Alicia, who is also an ExJW YouTuber, and I will link her channel down in the description. But she asks, do you feel like the organization has caused irreparable damage to certain aspects of your life? Or do you think any damage caused is repairable? That is a really interesting question. I think being raised as a witness does have real long-term negative consequences on your life going forward. Some big, some small. But I think that in my own case personally, I mean, I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, I do think that there will always be damage there. But that damage doesn't necessarily have to prevent me from living a full and happy life. Like say, for instance, if you cut yourself as a child while you're, I don't know, climbing a tree or you fall off your bike or something, sometimes you might get a permanent scar. That scar is always there, but it doesn't actually prevent you from doing anything. It doesn't impair you or hamper your activities in any way, but it's still there. And I think that once I get to a place where I'm healed from my JW upbringing, it will be a comparable situation to that. I hope that makes sense. Okay, the next question is from B. I redacted their name since they protect their tweets. And the question is, do you think governing body members really believe they are God's sole chosen representatives on earth? Or are they just con artists in it for the money, power, and prestige? Wow, that is that is a really, really good question. I think that's a question that every single ExJW has asked themselves or continue to ask themselves. I know I certainly do. And the honest answer is, I don't know. I mean, I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I just can't come to a definitive conclusion. I think reasonably, there's not going to be one answer for every single member of the governing body. I think it may be the case that some of them truly believe that they are God's sole channel of communication on earth, and some of them know that they are not, but they're just keeping up appearances for whatever their reasons may be. And even if that applied to all of them, they would all have different reasons for keeping up this deception. So I don't really think it's an answerable question. Who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. Okay, the next question is from Zara Williams, and the question is, what words of encouragement would you give to PMOs or to POMOs who are stuck in JW households, i.e. dependents, etc.? Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar with the terms PMO and POMO, PMO stands for physically in, mentally out. So that's somebody who's, for all intents and purposes, is still an active Jehovah's Witness, but they no longer believe in it. And POMO is physically out, mentally out. So somebody who is no longer a Jehovah's Witness and they no longer believe in the Jehovah's Witness doctrine. So it's sometimes the case that a PMO or a POMO is actually living at home, under their parents' roof, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, would present a really difficult family situation, either for the youth in question, the parents, or both. So to PMOs, my advice would be to seriously think about a long-term plan. Think about whether you'd be able to sustain in the long term, continuing being a Jehovah's Witness while no longer believe. I can't imagine the mental and emotional strain that would put upon a person. I mean, I know how it affected me when I started to have doubts, let alone somebody who definitely no longer believes in it anymore. I mean, it was really, really difficult. Going to meetings was very, very difficult. Sitting in the Kingdom Hall was excruciating at times. So I can't imagine what it would be like for somebody in this situation. So think about whether or not you can sustain that long term, you know, and if you feel that you can't, then you need to start putting things in place to make your Jexit from the organization. And if you do decide to leave the organization, you need to work out how you're going to do that. Are you going to disassociate? Are you going to just fade? These are, important concerns. And there's no one size fits all approach to this. Some people prefer to disassociate. Some people just walk away. It's up to you. You've got to do what is right for you. And just to clarify, when I say leave, I'm talking about leaving the organization, not necessarily leaving home. I'm not trying to advise any minors to run away, from their home. So what advice would I give to POMOs? Well, if you're POMO, then you've already left the organization. You're either disfellowshipped or disassociated. But that would present for a very strained relationship with your family that you're currently living with. I know, because I've been in that situation myself. And my advice in that situation would be, if you can make it work with minimal damage to you mentally and emotionally, then make it work. As we all know, it's almost impossible to leave the organization and keep your relationships with JW family members intact. So if you're in a situation where you have already left the organization, but you do have some semblance of a relationship with your family members, and you can keep that, and it's not a mental or an emotional drain on you, then my advice would be to keep it. But at the end of the day, you've got to do what's best for you. Okay, the next question is from Unapologetic Apostate, and it's a very simple question. How old are you? I am currently 43 years old. And the next question is from Aaron Bolt, and it says, do you think that in the near future, the governing body will give the direction to start the judgment proclaiming prelude of the Great Tribulation in the Watchtower literature? This meaning that they are completely deluded. Good question. I think I better give a bit of background to this. So one of the things that Jehovah's Witnesses are most famous for is their preaching activity. Pre-COVID, they would literally go door to door and preach to people at their homes. Since COVID, they've been doing things like telephone preaching and letter writing. Now, since the founding of the religion, right up until today, their message has been one of good news, telling people about the apparent good news of God's kingdom, which will soon, any day now, destroy all governments on the earth and rule in their place. And that is apparently good news. But they also believe that in the run-up to this destruction of worldly governments, at some point, their message is going to change. It's going to change from one of good news, saying Jehovah's Day is coming and you have a hope to survive it, to one of basically judgment, saying you're all totally screwed, you had your chance, this is coming and there's nothing you can do about it. Back to the question, will the governing body ever initiate this change in their message? My answer to that is no. I really, really do not believe that they will ever signal the change in this message. And for the reason for that is this. If they make that change and then they are wrong and then have to go back and say, no, we were a bit too premature with that one, we're going back to preaching good news, it would just, the whole thing would just be a laughing stock. It would just be like another 1975 where they, strongly suggested that the end of the world was going to happen in 1975 and then it didn't. They had a lot more wiggle room to get out of that one than they would with this. So I don't think that they would ever fully commit themselves to doing that. you know, it's just too big of a risk. And that brings us to our final question, which is from my good friend Apostate Sarah. Hi Sarah, I hope you and the family are all well. And the question is, the governing body keep talking about a time the lights may go out on JW broadcasting and no more watchtowers produced. JWs will have to rely on their own faith. Do you think they're mentally preparing JWs so that when this happens, the governing body can scarper with everyone's donations and JWs will be totally unaware? Do I think that this is one big grift? They're playing the long game. Um, it's a possibility, but I honestly don't think so. So Jehovah's Witnesses are basically a doomsday religion because they are, they've been preaching the end of the world for about 140 years now, and it hasn't come yet. But the governing body's response to that has always been to just make excuses and kick the can down the road. So I think they're going to do that for as long as they possibly can. I think they'll continue with the revisionist policies when it comes to their literature, so that new people coming in won't be aware of false predictions and mistakes that they've made in the past. And then governing body members will eventually grow old and pass away, and then new ones will be appointed, and it'll just keep like a constant reboot. So every few generations, not overlapping ones, but every couple of generations they'll just change up everything, and then the previous generations will die off, and then the new ones won't know anything about it. And I think that this cycle will just continue on for as long as they possibly can. And that's it. Thank you all so much for your questions. I'm sorry that I couldn't answer all of them, but this won't be the last Q&A video that I do. I will be doing another one at some point in time, so please feel free to give me more questions. If you haven't already done so, please like, share and subscribe. And thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.